Atheist Church. Rebel, free thinker, skeptic, atheist, agnostic, whatever you like to call yourself, you are welcome here. At Seattle Atheist Church, we call ourselves an atheist church because we'll never hear anything supernatural promoted from the website, from the podium. Just sort of.
No, go for
okay.
it. It's beautiful.
Sorry. Let me tell you our creed. Our creed is Seattle Atheist Church was founded on the principles of scientific naturalism and secular ethics. Truth claims are attempted here, and we stand ready to revise our thinking in light of new information. We attempt to be excellent to all conscious beings, and we believe in good because good works in non-mysterious ways. If that sounds good to you, then you are probably in the right place. So the way we do it is the members ourselves give the talk, and our practice is that after the talk we have a discussion. So the only official position is that we attempt to reason about life and help each other to think through things and to be good people. If you enjoy coming to church and you would like to support us financially, there's a jar at the back of the room, or you can make a donation online at Meetup. I want to let you know that we are now an affiliate of the American Humanist Association. And also next weekend is our Secular Saturday social, which will take place at Browers at 3 p.m. And that's about it. So welcome, Troy. Come on up.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, today I'm going to give a talk about homelessness. It's a very important issue, especially in this city. I'm just going to reference a few articles that I found that kind of talk about the cause of homelessness, kind of where Seattle is specifically, and kind of what we're currently doing to kind of combat it, and then talk about some things some other societies are doing and what we can learn from them, and then get into this group discussion and kind of talk it out. So I want to start off by kind of defining homelessness. From the National Healthcare of the Homelessness Council, which is a part of the HHS, there is more than one official definition of homelessness. Health centers funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Resources uses the following. A homeless individual is defined as an individual who lacks housing without regard to whether the individual is a member of a family, including an individual whose primary residence during the night is a supervised public or private facility that provides temporary living accommodations, and an individual who is a resident in traditional housing. A homeless person is an individual without permanent housing who may live on the streets, stay in the shelter, missions, single-room occupancy facilities, abandoned buildings or vehicles, or in any other unstable or non-permanent situation. An individual may be considered to be homeless if that person is doubled up, a term that refers to a situation where individuals are unable to maintain their housing situation and are forced to stay with a series of friends and or extended family members. In addition, previously homeless individuals who are to be released from a prison or recognition of an or hospital may be considered to be homeless if they do not have a stable housing situation to which they can return. A recognition of the instability of an individual's living arrangements is critical to the definition of homelessness. Programs funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development use a different, more limited definition of homelessness. And some of these are very critical because if one organization considers somebody to be homeless and another one doesn't, they may not be able to get all of the services they need. So they may be able to get put into the hospital and get services, but when they're put out, they may not be considered homeless to go into the, into the halfway house or into getting recovery Or, so having a coherent definition about homelessness is one of the keys to getting the services to the people that need it. And programs, and then there are different types of homeless. Not everyone, that you look at, looked homeless. Not everyone has the same situation, but they are all considered homeless. There are groups of people who experience homelessness in different ways, but all homelessness is characterized by extreme poverty coupled with the lack of stable housing. Children on their own or with their families, single adults, seniors, and veterans compose various demographic groups that may use different types of programs or services or have different factors that contribute to their homelessness. There are also those who experience homelessness for various lengths of time, short-term, long-term, or chronic, or who experience multiple episodes of homelessness, moving between housing and homelessness. Those who are doubled up or couch surfing are also considered homeless if their housing arrangement is for economic reasons and is unstable. A disagreement or other scenario could result in their being asked to leave the residence. Accessible and affordable housing is the key underlying need for all of these situations regarding other demographic factors. Now I want to read two articles that are kind of tied to Seattle and talk about kind of where we are and some of the root causes of especially why Seattle is in the situation it is today. The first one is from McKinsey, and it's by Maggie Stringfellow with Dilip Waggle, and it is titled "The Economics of Homelessness in Seattle and King County." Affluent coastal cities such as Seattle and King County, Washington, are experiencing a downside of economic growth. Rising homelessness. On a single winter night in 2017, volunteers counted 11,643 people experiencing homelessness in King County, a number that represented an increase of more than 9% a year on average since 2014. Almost half were sleeping outside rather than in an emergency shelter. The rise in homelessness cannot be explained by population growth or rising poverty, as there has been little of the former and the latter has fallen. Exhibit 1 suggests that the real cause, it shows how homelessness has risen in line with the fair market rent, which in turn has increased in line with the country's strong economic growth. During the financial crisis of 2008, when poverty and unemployment rose, homelessness was relatively stable. But when the economy took off in 2014, so did rents. Since then, the FMR has risen by more than 12% a year on average. Disappearing affordable housing. There are many triggers of homelessness: an unexpected expense, the loss of a job, poor health, and domestic violence among them. But the rapid decline in the stock of affordable housing means that when people lose their homes, many of them find it hard to find a suitable alternative. As one emergency shelter provider said, 10 years ago our community had pockets of cheap motels and apartments. When you hit rock bottom, you could still find a roof. Today there is no safe place for people to fall to. When crisis hits, you fall to the streets. The dwindling availability of affordable housing reflects the dynamics of the construction industry. When economic growth is strong, housing developers tend to build more profitable, expensive homes. As a result, expensive homes have become a larger percentage of the available supply in King County. Since 2011, the proposition of units deemed affordable to households earning 80% or more of the area median income have more than doubled. At the same time, those affordable for households earning 50% or less of the AMI have almost halved. Meanwhile, the homelessness crisis response system that provides the shelters led by All Home King County have dramatically improved its performance and efficiency in recent years. With a 35% increase in exits from homelessness over 2016, the system permanently housed 8,100 households in 2017. However, given the shortage of affordable housing options, the performance increase of the crisis response system is unlikely to sustain. There are fewer and fewer units available to them. how to house people. As things stand, homelessness in the county could very well worsen. The shortage of suitable permanent housing for people experiencing homelessness is already acute, although the county's annual points in time count identified that 11,000 people needing housing on a single night. As many as 22,000 households sought help from the county's homelessness services across the full year of 2017, at a time when only 8,000 permanent homes were available. Yet even these figures match the true extent of the shortage. How to solve the crisis. A more efficient homelessness response system could be a part of the solution. Progress has already been made. The number of people housed annually in King County has doubled since 2013. Resources optimization is a challenge, though all the King County and independent body is charged with setting out a strategic plan for various city, county, and philanthropic homelessness funders in King County and measuring results. But it has no authority over the stakeholders, an issue that makes it difficult to avoid redundant efforts that might lead to a waste. And through the research I've done, this is like one of the biggest things that we're facing is we do have councils in place to make decisions and to come up with plans, but they have no authority. They can't make other cities do things. They can't make the county do anything. They can just recommend. And if the cities don't all agree, then a lot of these plans can't be implemented because it is a region-wide effort. So they're being stifled by basically politics and having people agree to, put money where it needs to go. And that is one of the biggest problems, that we aren't really funding and giving authority to the people that need it in this community. The second article I want to talk about is actually from the City of Seattle's webpage, and it is titled "The Roots of the Crisis." The roots of Seattle's homelessness crisis. And it lists several of the main reasons why we have homeless. And the first one they talk about is mental health and addiction. Drug overdose is currently the leading cause of death among people who are homeless. In King County, more people enter detox for heroin than they do alcohol. In 2014, the 156 opiate overdose deaths were the highest ever recorded in King County. More than tripled the number of deaths in 2009. More than 3,600 people received methadone treatment in King County. But our region's lack of treatment capacity leaves more than 150 people on a wait list each day. Washington ranks 47th in the nation for psychiatric beds per capita. The next one they have listed is economic disparities and poverty. Seattle has a booming economy and high-wage jobs, but too many residents are being pushed out of the face of rising housing and living costs. And the growth in our economy has not been shared nearly widely enough. So one thing that Seattle is seeing is a bigger gap in income inequality. So, the rich are getting richer, but the ones who are being left behind are being left behind at a faster rate than they ever have in this city and this country at the same time. The next one, which kind of links directly to that, is the lack of affordable housing. According to the Census Bureau, Seattle was the fastest growing city in the nation, increasing on population by almost 19% over the past 10 years. Affordable housing development, coupled with rising rents in the private markets, has not kept pace with the needs. As the number of affordable units continue to decrease, the cost of housing continues to skyrocket. Over the past 6 years, rents have increased 57%. A recent analysis has found that 47% of households that rent in the Seattle metro area are housing cost burden, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on rent alone. In 2017, the Seattle Housing Authority opened its Lottery for Housing Choice voucher program, which helps low-income families, individuals, seniors, and people with disabilities pay their monthly rent in privately owned apartments or house. More than 21,500 completed registrations were received for 3,500 places on the list. The city remains dedicated to increasing affordable housing through the 2016 Seattle Housing Levy and other sources, including the initiative zoning and mandatory housing affordability. So those are some of the main reasons why the city of Seattle is listed as, causing our homelessness problem. Next, I want to read an article that kind of talks about Seattle. And I am a longtime Seattle resident, grew up here, and I can definitely say, from my point of view, that Seattle has changed. Since moving here in 1988, Seattle was a quiet, kind of wet city in the north that people didn't really look to. We had Boeing, and we were more of a close-knit community, and our homeless problem was like centered around downtown, and we had shelters, and having like people out sleeping on the streets was not a huge thing because our shelters were not filling up because we didn't have that many homeless at the time. But now, we really haven't increased the number of shelters, but the number of homeless has increased dramatically. And that's one of the main reasons why we have this problem here is we have not funded and put money into housing and resources and taking care of people who, have been put in that situation for one reason or another. So I'm going to read this article, which will kind of talk about Seattle specific. It's titled, "Homeless is Not a Choice, the State of Crisis in Seattle and King County." 3 years after the city of Seattle declared a homelessness state of emergency, the number of people experiencing homelessness in the region continues to increase. This year's one-night count of people experiencing homelessness in King County, conducted by the county's homelessness response agency, All Home, found 12,112 people living outdoors, in vehicles and in shelters, a 4% increase over 2017. At a press conference Thursday, when this was written, All Home Interim Director Kira Zildra attributed the rise in homelessness, which was slightly slower this year than in previous counts, to a growing lack of affordable housing in King County. Homelessness is not a choice, she said. We are the fastest growing big city in the country. The economy is booming and the rents are rising, which leads to more and more people falling into homelessness. The January 2018 count also showed up sharp increases in the number of people living unsheltered on sidewalks, in parks, in sanctioned encampments, and in vehicles, as well as an increase in the number of single and chronically homeless individuals. The number, according to the report, is to be considered a minimum estimate. The accountability represents an undercount of the true number of people experiencing homelessness at any one time. So to kind of really dive into that, they actually went out and tried to find every single homeless person in one night, and they had a huge team doing it, and they counted every single homeless person that they found. So this number is the actual number that they talked to and found. So it's not including any homeless that are couch surfing, that are not visible, that are hidden out of sight. So those numbers are not reflected in this count. So this is a minimum number. So the problem could be actually much worse than what this number portrays. Next, for time, I want to talk about kind of what are we doing? Kind of what is the council? What is our current thing that we're doing, and what is it doing for us? So this article is the never-ending search for an effective King County homeless plan. All Home Services, as King County's official stakeholder group tasked with coordinating regional efforts to address homelessness crisis, but both current and former members have frustrations about All Home's structural limitations, one that hinder the ability to actually make a dent in the issue. For starters, despite being tasked with aligning the work of King County's various governments and the nonprofit sector on homelessness, All Home has no tangible authority over those entities or how they spend their money. We do not hold all authority and accountability for addressing homelessness in the region, said Kira Zilstra, acting director of All Home, at a special April 23rd meeting on All Home structure and effectiveness. She added that the King County and Seattle agencies operate siloed from one another with different levels of resources to address the crisis. Formed in 2015, All Home, which is technically a part of King County government, succeeded its predecessor, the Committee to End Homelessness. That group, which was founded in 2005, developed a 10-year action plan to eradicate homelessness. When 2015 arrived and the committee's goal of ending homelessness had clearly not been achieved, a reorganization was in order. That same year, former Seattle Mayor Ed Murray and King County Executive Dow Constantine declared a state of emergency due to regional homelessness. There was a decision to have a successor organization that would not abandon everything that had been done before, but kind of reboot it and figure out what we had learned, where we had been successful, and try to do something newer and better. Daniel Malone, Executive Director of the Downtown Emergency Service Center and board member of All Home, told Seattle Weekly in a phone interview. So that's kind of the organization we have and kind of what they're doing right now. So it's a newer organization. They're kind of figuring out what we've done wrong and what we need to do. But like they said, there's frustrations. They don't have a lot of authority, and it's bureaucracy. It takes a lot of funding and time and meetings to get these things. And with a crisis like this, you need to be able to respond to things when things happen. We can't really sit in our hands and do things. So lastly, I want to read an article about a society that has done something different and kind of talk about what it's done to them and how it's affected them, and maybe some things that we can learn. So this article is titled, "Here's How Finland Solved This Homelessness Problem." In the last year in the UK, the number of people sleeping rough rose by 7%. That's a British term. Sleeping rough is sleeping on the streets. In Germany, the last 2 years saw a 35% increase in the number of homeless, while in France, there has been an increase of 50% in the last 11 years. These are Europe's 3 biggest economies, and yet they haven't solved their housing problem. Across Europe, this picture is much the same, except in Finland. There, the number of homelessness is steady decreasing. So what have they been doing differently? It's an ideology. The Finns have turned the traditional approach to homelessness on its head. There can be a number of reasons as to why someone ends up homeless, including sudden job loss or family broken down, severe substance abuse, or mental health programs. But most homelessness policies work on the premise that the homeless person has to sort those problems out first before they can get permanent accommodations. Finland does the opposite. It gives them a home first. The scheme, introduced in 2007, is called Housing First. It is built on the principles that having a permanent home can make solving health and social problems much easier. The homeless are given permanent housing on a normal lease that can range from a self-contained apartment to a housing block with around-the-clock support. Tenants pay rent and are entitled to receive housing benefits. Depending on their income, they may contribute to the cost of the supportive services they receive. The rest is covered by local government. Since the scheme started, thousands have benefited. Constant support. At the same time as being given a home, they receive individual tailored support services. For instance, anyone can receive an appointment with a housing advisor and receive advice in things like problems with paying the rent or applying for other government benefits. There are also financial and debt counseling services to help people manage their finances and debts. Much of the support can be provided in their own home. Housing First works so well because it's a mainstream national homeless policy with a common framework. According to Juha Kakian, Chief Executive of Y Foundation, a social enterprise that provides housing to Housing First. It involves a wide partnership of people, state, volunteers, municipalities, and NGOs. More affordable housing. Chronic housing shortages contribute to homelessness. In Finland, increasing the supply of affordable renting housing was a critical part of the approach. Finland uses its existing social housing, but also bought flats from the private market and built new housing blocks in order to provide homes. There are no more homeless shelters in Finland. They have all been turned into supported housing. It all costs money, but it saves more. All this costs money, admits Kakian, but there is a simple evidence from many countries that show it is always most cost effective to aim to end homelessness instead of something trying to manage it. Investments in ending homelessness always pay back, to say nothing of the human and ethical reasons. The savings in terms of the services needed by one person can be up to 9,600 euros a year when compared to the cost that would result from the person being homeless, he adds. No consensus. Not everyone in Finland is happy with the new policy. Firstly, many of those working with the homeless objected to the idea that they should receive a home first without having to sort out any of the problems first. But Housing First argues that it's much more difficult to solve any problem without having a roof over your head. In the words of one person who benefited from the scheme, homelessness also meant daily alcohol use. It was not so much about getting drunk, but a way to pass the time. When I've had an apartment, I've spent several months without drinking. You can't get sober when you're homeless, no one can. And in the residential areas where new housing blocks were established, many residents were unhappy. They were worried that it would adversarially affect their neighborhood. Part of the approach of Housing First is that a sense of community is very important. For instance, when a new housing block is built, much work is done in the local neighborhood and at the same time. That includes keeping the local community informed through open houses, events, encountering residents and interact openly with the local community, as well as working in the local community, picking up litter and taking care of the neighborhood's green spaces. When a new supported housing unit opens, it typically takes about 2 years for the area to get accustomed to the unit and its residents. It takes about the same amount of time for the unit's residents to adjust well into the environment. Another issue with the policy was it didn't seem to be reaching women. Women's homelessness had not decreased, even though homelessness and long-term homelessness in general has. Consequently, closer attention to this has paid to solving and finding solutions to women's homelessness. And lastly, can this work abroad? Why Foundation believes that the model can be replicated in Europe, even though housing conditions vary. In the UK, a study by the Homelessness Charities Crisis found that a policy of this kind in the UK could be more than 5 times as effective and nearly 5 times more cost effective than existing services. But a current government report concluded that whilst the work of Housing First in Finland was to be accompanied, we believe that resources should be focused on supporting more mainstream efforts to tackle homelessness and prevent instances of entrenched homelessness. Kakian says, there is no quick fix to all life's situations, but a solid base provides the foundation upon which to improve the welfare of homelessness. The first step in change is the change in attitudes. So in conclusion, I just want to say that I don't have any answers. There is no clear answer to homelessness, but there seems to be certain things that work and certain things that just don't work. And those are things that we need to figure out why they do what they do and why they don't work and why they do work, and kind of analyze and figure out, how we need to tackle this to fit our city. As you've heard, not every city is the same, and not every cause for homelessness in that city is the same. So let's get into a circle and discuss. Thank you.